Welcome everyone to the July meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission Research Committee. I've got a few interesting things on the agenda this month. I guess we can start with the Kittrell Drive house. Hope everybody had a chance to read the Anderson Heights neighborhood report. I read it all yesterday, and it was actually pretty interesting to read. I guess I'll start by asking everyone if they had any thoughts on this house and see where it goes from there.
I did read the report, the Anderson Heights report, and I know the report was a couple years ago. We're not reviewing it per se, but once again, I really liked it. I liked all the talk of the more recent architecture and the FHA influenced building styles and suburban development. It's all really cool. And the house in question, 2721 Kittrell, is mentioned in the report specifically, I think one time, just as an example of a basic house, as they called it. So I don't know if that is, if that supports listing it or not, the house, but it's fairly lukewarm. They didn't say the house is wonderful or anything, but it certainly is an example of a basic FHA house, I guess.
Yeah, I think that my opinion on it is that this is a really wonderful little house. But considering that there are several other original FHA houses even on that block, I don't think that it has enough significance at this time to go forward with it, especially considering it has been painted. The board and batten siding on the gable ends is not original. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Did y'all get a chance to also look at the pictures that were in the folder? As I recall, I think there were some issues finding them last month when I wasn't here. Okay.
I don't think I saw the pictures. I don't think I did.
I can pull them up if you'd like me to share.
That'd be great. Yes.
And this house is being landmarked for its association with FHA, correct, staff?
I mean, that's one possibility. So, Rachel Wooten, the owner, she is, here today, and she can answer any questions. But that is certainly one of the possibilities. The question is, does the research committee think that there is enough potential significance to warrant her hiring an architectural historian to, do a report? You could say, no, you don't think so, save your money. You could say, maybe, and hire someone to do sort of a preliminary delve into it, and then it's only a little bit of money spent. Or you could say, yes, go for it. We think there's a high, chance of success. I think the challenge with simple houses in general in neighborhoods is, finding what that level of significance is, because the neighborhood has already been determined that it's not eligible to be a district. So how do property owners that are interested, and then the commission, what's the level of preservation then that can be done you know, with individual properties. And I think one of the things that didn't, is sometimes reports will call out specifically the district is not eligible, but here are some possible ones that could be listed. And I will be honest and say I didn't reread the report, so I'm not sure if that's was stated in there. Then there's also, you know, is this, let me back up, you know, what individual properties are likely to be the best representative of the neighborhood? And then you're also balancing that with, you know, property owner interest as well. Because it is possible for there to be a particular property that, you know, is absolutely 100% the best example of a, you know, a lighthouse in Raleigh. And the owner could say, I'm not at all interested. And so the commission's interest is kind of, you know, moot at that point. So it's a lot of things to balance. But now Colette has to put photos up and I'll stop talking.
So there are a few photos here and I'll scroll through them. I don't think that they're in any particular or logical order, so it might bounce around a little bit.
And certainly, you know, just as a reminder, when it comes to landmark designation, the city code criteria is that it has special significance in terms of architecture, history, culture, archaeology. I feel like there's one more I'm missing, but special significance is the term. And then it has to have the requisite integrity. And I think that was one of the comments last time that you were talking about, and the question is, what about the painted brick? And now there is, you know, the board and batten replacement. I think any changes to the rear, such as, you know, any, those are less significant. But
I will say that I think the board and batten siding on the gable ends looks much better than what it did before, but.
That's right, because she said she removed the vinyl or aluminum siding that had been over it and then replaced, I believe that's fiber cement siding. Is that correct, Rachel?
So I'll say a few things. The reason I'm actually even doing this is because I'm so distressed with the trends that we've been experiencing in Raleigh, and they seem to be getting more intense. And I'm really worried about this text change business that this council is looking at. So many of these houses, including the one next door to me, have been torn down all through our neighborhood. And when you look, I think she had a picture of it closer to the front of the house, that some of these, these are very specific features. That scalloped edge above the porch, and I don't know if you can see it, there's also a scalloped edge above the door, and those columns. Those were pretty classic for several houses in the neighborhood. I don't know if there's any left now besides mine. And then the brick coins on the, if you go to the next picture, I think you can see them. The brick coins, that they were also there on my neighbor's house. There may be one other house in the neighborhood that have got those left, but anyway, so, and I think I tried to take a few pictures of the yard. I think there's several trees in the yard that are 100 years old, and the plantings, some of these azaleas are really, really old, and these old hydrangeas. You know, and I'm also looking into a preservation easement for the property, because I honestly, I'm not exaggerating. I can hardly stand watching what's going on. Because as you know, when they take these houses down, they take down the entire, every living thing on the lot so that they can build some monstrous thing that, you know, looks like it came from another planet. But these are my biases. Anyway, And I also, because I have been talking to some people, I really do understand your concerns about the paint and the board and batten. So I kind of, I get what your concerns are, and I'm just saying why I decided to even look into it. Tanya knows I was one of many people who tried to get a historic overlay for our neighborhood, and you would have thought, you know, we wanted to limit the size of your family. People got so mad. We were not a popular group of people for a while. So then I thought, well, I'm just going to see what I can do. So anyway,
Rachel, do you know about the anything about the early history of your house, the first owners?
you know, I don't. I'm pretty sure it was built in 42. I know the two prior owners, and I think there's one more. There was a man named Elmer Scott, who I don't remember. I never knew them, and his wife, and they raised two boys here, which is interesting, with one bathroom. I mean, I've got another bathroom in my bedroom now, but I can also walk you around the inside of the house because the you know the archways and the mantelpiece and all this kind of stuff, all the original stuff, the hardwood floors, is still here. I did open up the kitchen, so but you know you're looking at my kitchen right now because I'm sitting in it. But I don't know who the owner was prior to Ian Scott. I mean Ian to Elmer Scott.
I did a little bit of research on it last month, so my memory is a little foggy, but I believe if not the first owner, the second owner was associated with the Powell and Griffiths grocery store in Raleigh, which is a very long time business outfit in the city. So that is somewhat of note, and I think should be taken into consideration. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure that that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hearing is kind of what I had said before, maybe. And so it's if you wanted to proceed, Rachel, I would say the next step would be to hire an architectural historian to do, you know, an initial, you know, cursory assessment. And then you could to give their professional opinion, but then if it looks potentially positive, come back to the research committee, and then, you know, before deciding whether or not you want to actually file a formal application. If you want to, I know you have to leave at 8:30, but we do have one item on the agenda where someone did hire an architectural historian, and they met with me and like, we're not sure. And so I suggested they write a letter. So we do have a letter from an architectural historian for another property for the committee to look at. So that's sort of an example. I mean, it's not like this is the first time this has ever happened before.
Sure.
But I think it sounds like at this point, it's certainly not a slam dunk. And it's, you know, a matter of you know, weighing as far as protection, actual solid for the future protection, the easement is the way to go. And I encourage you to pursue that. Landmark designation would have the COA process. I will mention that we very rarely have internal designations, but if you were to choose to, you know, include interior features, that can be part of it. You know, when it comes to interior designations, you sort of pick what about it. So you could specifically say the fireplace mantle or, you know, the arches or something like that. We now have two properties. Well, one property, sorry, and one that is requesting it.
Well, so in terms of, you know, you could see that picture in the back, there's a very small deck. Somebody, I think it was Elmer Scott, added a screened-in porch on the back. And I cleaned that up. You can tell, I think, even by the picture, it's very simple. But that's definitely new. So I didn't know whether that would be another negative. You know what I mean? So.
I'm not sure what the committee thinks. I would say not necessarily, because the point of the landmark designation is not to necessarily freeze it at time,
Okay.
but there would be a certificate of appropriateness process. So if there wasn't a screen porch and you wanted a screen porch, you would apply to get permission. And typically, unless a house has some super significant feature on the rear, it is not uncommon for rear additions to be approved through the certificate of appropriateness process.
Okay.
So, do you have any other questions or comments for her?
I hesitate to say that you should hire someone, but I would be interested to see what they uncovered as far as the first or second owner of the house, and how significant they are to its history and all that. As far as just the architecture, I don't think it holds enough significance, but it may in combination with the owners.
Okay.
Those are my final thoughts.
Okay. I think 20 years from now it might, because I think they're going to all be gone. I do think I appreciate your time. Actually, this is interesting to hear your comments, and I also thought about it because usually properties that have historic significance are large and whatever. And this is an example of a small house that was really good for a lot of families in the 40s. The missing middle that we've now torn down. Anyway, I do appreciate your time, and it's really interesting to hear what you have to say. So I'll consider the getting somebody to take a cursory look at it, as you said, Tanya. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we move on to the Dyke House then? So, hope everybody had a chance to look at the letter. Not exactly what I was expecting, but the historian's comments do make sense. Anyone have any thoughts on the letter before I say anything?
Can we show a couple pictures while you're talking about that? I'll let you have your comments. I will say my first comment was, wow, that is unique looking.
Yeah, I liked I kind of liked the letter report, and that is that house certainly is different than the rest of the houses around it, I think. I'm not sure the date of the surrounding neighborhood, but I believe the date for this house is 1916. I would think the rest of the neighborhood was a bit later than that, at least.
Yeah, that's correct, Caleb. It's a pretty early house for the neighborhood.
Yeah, and
I mean, it was built before Van Dyke was even put through, so.
yeah, and it says that it was on a 3-acre lot, I believe, at one time.
Right.
Subdivided since. I'm not really able to judge the design features or the architectural features in terms of comparing it. The good example of a bungalow. But it sounds like it's certainly one of the earliest in Raleigh, but we don't know exactly because we haven't surveyed all of them. So I don't know, but it's definitely interesting.
So for anybody that wants to watch this later on YouTube and Tanya and Rachel's edification, this is a property that was identified by the research committee as potentially being eligible for landmark designation, and the architectural historian, as they were doing their research, had some questions about whether or not it in fact is significant, because, and that thus they wrote the letter with, what they had researched so far, and then, with a question to the committee about whether or not y'all still think it has significance based on the research that they had done before. Primarily being it would be architectural, as opposed to significance for the person who built the house. And the
I have a
windows,
question. Oh, I just had a question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is this, I didn't mean to interrupt, and I'm kind of coming right here on the middle, but it's on Van Dyke. Is this, is it, how close is it to Overland Road? Is it down the street farther? Like, would it have been like,
It's closer to Dixie. It's between Brooks and Dixie.
okay, that kind of answers my question. Anyway, I think it's adorable. Okay. Reason I was asking that was because I was wondering if it was, I'm trying to get all my dates right though. I was wondering if it was part of the Overland Village area. And so, it's built in, was it built in, I don't know if I'm right, in the 20s, 1922-ish?
1916.
1916, okay. So it's earlier than that, okay. Yeah, it's cute. Are those shingles? What about those shingles on the outside?
Those are said to be original shingle siding. I
Sweet.
think my main concern, one of the main concerns I have, is the integrity of the house. The dormer has been altered, and apparently it only retains 40% of the original windows. Is that correct, Tanya? Or is it the other way around? But in any case, not all the windows are original. It's been sort of hacked up inside, I've heard from the owners. I love this house. It's very unique for a bungalow. It's an early bungalow, but a unique style for a bungalow. And for those who don't aren't as familiar, a bungalow isn't necessarily a style. It's a more of a layout. It's not a particular style of building. This is a style of bungalow. But yeah, the integrity of the house does concern me.
I thought it was some pretty good detective work.
Go ahead,
that they
Caleb.
did. I thought there was some pretty good detective work they did by examining that first photo from the 80s, and that one, and noting the dormer there on the right-hand side of the roof, and then noticing that it doesn't touch the chimney there, but then in more recent photos, that same dormer is actually touching the chimney right there. So that was pretty neat. detective work to say, oh, wow. So I believe that's a picture. I think that I got that right. So that was pretty neat how they figured that out. Because it's pretty minor, you know, they just rebuilt the dormer, I believe is what they said. Maybe it was rotten or something and put it back, but now it's touching the chimney.
So I'm going to sign off to get ready for my next meeting, but anyway, this is very interesting, and I want to thank you for being here. And
Thank you, Rachel.
okay, y'all take care. Bye. Bye.
You're correct, Ian. It does say they estimate that 40% of the windows are original and the others were made by the current property owner to replicate the historic windows, took profiles of the windows. So they're not.
I personally think that, that's pretty cool that he actually did that. And I think that adds, for me, in my opinion, that adds rather than takes away, that he actually personally built those. I know how hard it is to build windows because I've built windows. Nothing that complicated though. But I know an architectural historian might not look at it that way. So.
Yeah, I mean, that was my gut too. And another thing to consider is that from a regulatory standpoint, you know, from a needing a certificate of appropriateness standpoint, if it's wood and the profiles are the same and it is in fact, you know, no change in material design, you know, profile dimensions, all of that, then it's not considered a change and a certificate of appropriateness would not be needed. I think it also matters, you can take into consideration, you can compare the historic windows to the new replicated windows as part of the analysis.
So the letter also said that they would be cautious about landmarking this to setting precedent to landmarking houses that were built by NC State faculty because there's a lot of them in the neighborhood, which I guess is a good point because there's a lot of them, but that sort of surprised me a little bit. I mean, people are individuals, and the Brown family owned this house for a very long time and had other ventures, and they have a pretty unique family history as far as I can tell. What does anyone have any thoughts, staff, commissioners, about that? I don't know. I guess it can be landmarked for both, can't it?
Yes. I will say that in the West Raleigh National Register Historic District that this is part of, and that would it's our largest National Register district, I think. Actually, Glenwood, Brooklyn might, but it goes the other way. But in any case, there are not many landmarks. There's the Rose, Garden, and the theater. There is the agricultural experiment station. There is the Milton Small. No. Yeah. Both office and house are in the district. I know the office is. That I think is it. So there's not. We don't have that many so far.
Are we sponsoring this? No.
No. No, this is one that was identified, and the committee sent a letter to the owner saying, hey, we think your property might be significant. and the property owner has hired Richard Grubb and Associates. And that's who I spoke with Olivia Heckendorf and Ellen Turco a couple of weeks ago, and suggested that, you know, this letter would be the next step if they didn't feel comfortable moving forward on their own. So they spoke with their client. That is what they did.
I think that this is what you just said, but the property owners reached out to us after we sent the letters. Several at the beginning of the year, perhaps that was the 13 properties, I think, that we mailed.
I don't know. I feel pretty good about it. I mean, it's certainly interesting. It's different than its surrounding. It's older, I believe, than most of the houses in that. I need to read up on the West Raleigh district, but certainly kind of thinking about what I know of that neighborhood, which is just having driven through it for many years. You know, seems different than many of the others or most of the others. You know, as far as where it stands within the realm of bungalow styles, or would be craftsman, Ian? Was that what we would call the actual style? Or
Yeah, I would say it's got some, it definitely has some craftsman attributes to it, but the Tudor style windows are just very unique to that neighborhood and to the bungalow style. It's just a very uniquely styled house. And my feeling is that seeing how unique it is, along with the history of the family, not just Mr. Brown, but the whole family, how big the lot originally was, how early it is to the neighborhood, my feeling is that it does have special significance.
You do not have to make a decision today. If you'd like to wait until next month when we have Susan here as well,
Yeah,
we can continue to talk about it.
let's do that.
And
Yeah,
I will say that I think Harold's having some technical issues. I know he went off camera. I saw him on phone. He popped up for a little while, but now he's gone again. So I agree with. And she pointed out to me in a message that the others I was missing that are landmarks in the West Raleigh district are the Knee-High building, and also the Wilmot Apartments. Not the same kind of building as this, but also within the historic district.
yeah,
Just
and for what it's worth,
fact, in looking at the map, it looks like all of our landmarks in the West Raleigh district are in very close proximity to Hillsborough Street.
yeah, and I think you know, to the untrained eye, as it were, someone could walk by this house or drive by it and say, well, that definitely is different, you know. So sort of on a layman's perspective, unlike say the house on Kittrell, all due respect, this one really does jump out in terms of, well, that's an interesting. We do know it's old. We do know it's not like the others that surround it. So if that matters, the idea of differentness or uniqueness certainly jumps out with this one more than some.
An interesting distinction too that I hadn't thought to make until we were discussing what we've landmarked in this National Register district is that most of what is landmarked is not residential, despite the size of the National Register district being largely residential properties. You know, the NC State Experimental building or extension building is a house, and it's got a weird configuration too compared to the street that it's on. Kind of a sign of it being there before things were developed in that area as well. But something else to consider in terms of what we've actually called out in the neighborhood as significant individually.
Okay, well, we'll revisit next month then.
Okay, we'll let them know.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is 2405 Glenwood Avenue. This is a giant house on Glenwood Avenue built in 1927-8, somewhere around there. Anyone have any initial thoughts?
As some background, I'll add that we received an email out of the blue. The house is under contract, I believe. The new potential owner knows a little bit about its most recent residents and was curious as to whether it would be likely to be designated a landmark. And if so, it would be something that he is interested in pursuing. So I told him that we would bring it up to you guys to see, you know, if he should proceed similar to the William Hand Brown house, get a consultant to test the waters, see what's there. So I have pulled a couple random things. I do not think the potential owner does not know a lot about the house's history, just its recent history. So I found some things that I shared with you via email. I can pull up pictures from the real estate listing.
So the house was built by Sylvester Brown Shepherd, who was a local attorney and for lack of a better term, real estate mogul. It seemed like he owned half of Raleigh at the time. I did a lot of looking in the Register of Deeds, and he's got hundreds and hundreds of properties that he owned. It's incredible. I had no idea that he was such a prolific landowner in Raleigh. Apart from that, I'm not really sure what he did. He was a pretty prominent citizen. His wife was originally Lilla May Vass, who was the daughter of William Worrell Vass, who was pretty well known among historians for being a president of, I think it was the president of the Raleigh and Gaston Railroad. So the Vass family was pretty big in Raleigh. So it has two prominent original owners. Yeah, and then Art Pope owned it for a while.
In addition to two prominent original owners, I would say a very prominent builder and architect as well. The builder, I believe, is James Davidson. And the architect was James Salter. And when I looked the two of those folks up, one of them actually has a number of properties on our potential landmarks and landmarks list.
And that's Salter, right? I think so. I feel like I know there's one on Newbern that is on our list, and it's in Longview Gardens. And from my recollection, that was the last house he designed before he got hit by a car and died. I hope I'm remembering that correctly and not just.
Well, so it looked like Davidson and Salter worked together frequently. They both were involved in the Clarence Poe House, Longview, which I think is on our potential landmarks list. Davidson built Pine State Creamery, Pullman Memorial Baptist, which is also on our potential list. The Royal Baking Company. So they are well represented, I think, on our list of landmarks already. But that doesn't, I guess, discount their work.
What do we know about that part of town? I just looked at my Google Maps and I recognize where it is, kind of just on Glenwood, just before you get to the country club across the street. There's a series of giant homes right there across. I don't know if we've done much work in that area. Kind of wondered where all those big houses came from and why they're there. But I can't think of how many, but certainly 10 or 12 along the left.
Caleb,
Oberlin,
Caleb,
yes.
do you think you can adjust your microphone to make you talk louder? I think there's a way.
All
You've been
right.
kind of quiet all the time, and then that last bit was super quiet.
It's pretty low tech. I apologize.
Oh, that's better.
It's, I think the mic's
That actually is
better.
better.
Yeah, so maybe it's rubbing against my shirt or something. Well, all I was saying was I did not know what we've done in this part of town along Glenwood. Lots of large houses there on Glenwood across from the country club before you get to Oberlin. Just thinking in my head, and I don't know how this compares to them or if we know anything about that part of the neighborhood.
So in looking at HPO web, that particular stretch of Glenwood does not appear to have had a lot of research. It's just outside of the Bloomsbury boundary, probably by about a block. Directly kind of across this Glenwood on Anderson, at the corner of Anderson and St. Mary's, the Hubert Stockard house was surveyed at one point. But other than that, not much has been identified within a couple blocks of this address.
Right, and on the other side of the country club, we do have a handful of landmarks on Granville and Perquimans, but nothing on the southern side.
Those are more modernist, aren't they?
Yes,
One of them's Nick's house, isn't it?
yes. Tatum house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think if the owner could find out a bit more about the house itself and how maybe it stands apart from the ones that are near it. I don't know if you heard me earlier, but I was saying there are several very large houses along Glenwood right there. Rich folks' houses, as we call them. But so I don't know. I just don't know how it stands, compared to others. But it's certainly a very nice house, and it looks like it's in good condition. And
I would say, in comparison to most of its neighbors, I think it probably doesn't really stand out. I think that most of those grand houses around it probably have very similar histories with prominent owners, political figures, and the like. But that said, I think it probably should be looked into a little bit further. I think it has enough going for it. But you could probably landmark half the houses around it based on those criteria. So
on a similar, oh, Tony, did you have something to say?
I was just gonna say that, because I'm not really, so familiar with all the, details of what qualifies these homes, to be landmark. But my thoughts on this house, because I know it, is that, and I've actually been to it before, maybe 10 years ago. But I think what stands out to me, about this house in contrast, I know there's a lot of lovely homes over there. I think the stonework, and I know there are a few stone houses over there, but I think the stone work on it, and I know it looks like, as I recall, like maybe just architectural features like the doors and unless they've been replaced, you know, the windows, things just look, I'm looking at it right now. It's also on that large piece of land, I think it's over an acre. So, and it's hidden, you know, up there pretty much. But that's my personal opinion on how it actually stands out. It is quite a different style, but there's maybe the stones, you know, the local stones, I'm sure that's what they are. Not that matters to a lot of people, but I think it is a significantly different home right there in that stretch. Personally, I think that.
Speaking of being hidden, Ian shared a very cool picture that I will share with you of the house, I believe, just after construction. And it's pretty amazing to see without all of the vegetation between it and Glenwood.
And the paving of Glenwood, or lack thereof.
Ian,
Yeah.
I'm really curious how you found this picture. What is your process to go dig these things up?
Sometimes it's just typing in an address, but for something like this that wasn't identified, I just remembered where it was, which collection it was in, where in the collection it was. Kind of hard to explain.
Okay, which is what I was just going to say was magic, which is what you just said.
So this was originally Country Club Drive because that's where the road went. It didn't go any further past the country club. Just a little bit of background on that. So that's probably why it was gravel. It didn't go any further. It was originally, I think, 2411 Country Club, and then it changed to 2411 Glenwood when Glenwood was extended, and then it changed to 2405 Glenwood. So researching the history of this house was very annoying because you couldn't pin down an address.
So somewhat related, we did not put it on the agenda, but you know, every once in a while we do get these random requests from property owners from properties that we have not previously identified. So would it be helpful for you to have some kind of standardized form that we can ask people to fill out, or some sort of standardized letter, so that when they come to you to ask, is this potentially a landmark, or should we pursue this, to kind of help distill some of what we already know, so that we're not just throwing stuff at Google and seeing what we can find ourselves?
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. I feel like we're seeing that more and more.
Yeah.
Where there needs, you know, it could be where it's not on our list and we just don't automatically know. And I think we could add that. We've got a lot of things that we need to do, but I think that could be potentially helpful. My question is, what guidance do you have for this particular property owner at this point, or potential property owner rather?
I would say that he or she should go ahead and get somebody to look at it.
Do you think that it is worthwhile also for those that perhaps we've identified, or they've done some initial work of what we, you know, this, and we've a couple times done these sort of requested pre-research from an architectural historian, whether, I think we did that for Hillcrest Cemetery and some others, to also identify what you would like to see in that sort of initial report. Like I guess I'm suggesting that as a possibility, but also asking for this particular property, do you think that would be a good first step to not go do a full-blown report, but sort of do a free assessment? Which?
Given how it's not a slam dunk, I would say definitely a the tiptoe approach might be better.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see here. I guess we can move on to the Earthworks report, which was pretty fascinating to read. Is this just a, we just want to invite him to the next meeting?
That's what we're asking you, is if you want to invite them. This came, out of the blue, emailed to me by one of the consultants, and who prepared the report for a private person. And they said, we have this, we think it's wonderful, we'd love for you to do things, and we're happy to come to a meeting if you would like for us to. So I said, I'll ask. Yeah.
What decisions would we potentially be making in the future on this? Well, I mean, it's really interesting to read, but my question is, why do we care? Other than it's very interesting.
Well, and that would be your question. I mean, if there were a property owner, if the report, and I did read the report and provide a summary to folks in the planning department as well. It is possible that if you felt that one or more of the sites, rose to the significance of being eligible for a landmark designation, you could reach out to a property owner, but nothing different than that, similar to any other architectural report that, you may have hired someone to do. That's really, or you could say, hey, this is great, pass it along to the community awareness committee to say, would you share in our social media about this information? So that's where I see your role potentially would be.
I definitely think we should invite them next month. I'd like to hear more from them. And especially considering that there is a Raleigh historic landmark that the original breastworks have said to have gone through. So we might be involved in that way, maybe, I don't know.
Well, from my point of view, I like the report. It certainly was sound. The methods and the presentation, it's a very, very well done. That company, Richard Grubb and Associates, they're doing a lot of work around this area recently. I'm not sure. I think maybe they're one of our consultants that we use at the DOT now. Very cool subject. I like the way they kind of narrowed it down to like 3 locations that they wanted to spot check. That seemed like that's exactly what I would have done. It would be neat for them to talk to us, and even like if they have almost like a PowerPoint they could give us, like they probably presented a conference or something. That would be pretty neat, either us or everybody. Also, the lady at WRAL, Heather, is that her name? I bet she would be quite interested in this sort of thing. If-
Yeah, she's the chair. She's the chair of the RHDC Community Awareness Committee.
Yeah, I would think that this would be right up her alley in terms of like a cool little feature she could do on it. I will say, in terms of landmarking, I know a bit about earthworks because we come upon them with some regularity all around the state, and they're a hard one to argue for uniqueness or good examples. It's like, other than just knowing they're there, they don't really have a lot to offer archaeologists, at least. But it would be neat to, I think a lot of people would appreciate if there's like a neat stretch of one that we could find somewhere that we knew was definitely that, and if it could be, you know, marked and protected, I think a lot of people would appreciate that. But from a scholarly point of view, it really doesn't. They're hard to argue for anything we can learn from them.
How much time would you want them? Like 10 minutes for a presentation?
That sounds about right. Do you think maybe, just throwing this out there, maybe the entire commission would want to know about it, or do you think this is more research?
That's certainly an option. I mean, we've got executive committee tomorrow morning. We can ask Gaston and crew.
I would say depending on how long the business meeting agenda is, maybe we could put them in for 10 minutes. Because
Okay.
I feel like the rest of the commission would find it interesting as well.
Yeah, I think this is gold in terms of public relations and something that everybody would be interested in. I think very, very interesting, very cool, and they did it very well also.
Okay, so staff will report that out tomorrow morning at executive. I don't think I invited you to that, Ian, since you're not chair anymore. So I gave you that little bit anyway. So officially not on executive committee, but we will mention it to everyone tomorrow
Okay.
morning. I don't think the agenda is that long at the moment. So.
Okay.
Before we move on to the updates, we do have a last minute agenda item. Yesterday, I think we got a response letter from the state for the Thompson Jones Anderson Allen house, which we have added to Dropbox. They had a couple comments and suggested corrections, additions to the report. Tanya, is there any specific action we need to take here?
No, I wanted to let the committee know, since there were a lot more comments than we typically receive, I have reached out to the property owner and the architectural historian, and I'm going to try to talk with the architectural historian today. I need to respond to her email. Because the letter that we got from the official letter that we got from the state says, you know, all the regular things, a little bit about the house, and then says that, you know, if the changes we suggest to staff are made, then there's enough information for the government body to decide if it's eligible, you know, if it could be a landmark. So that's a pretty strong statement coming from the state. It had a little bit to do with integrity. There was questioning of, I think they just wanted it a little bit more fleshed out in terms of it being, yes, it's oldest, still in use this way, but there have been, you know, there were these building campaigns throughout its history, and you know, coalescing that a little bit better. So I just didn't want y'all to be surprised, I guess. And it's potential that the, city council, who will see the letter at the joint public hearing, which is scheduled for September 7th, to see that in the letter and say, well, what changed? So it is potential that there will be a revised report at your August meeting.
Okay, shall we move on to some status updates? Colette, do you have those for us, or where are we on the African American Architectural Survey?
So we just have a running list of projects we are working on and things that we should keep in the back of our minds as they're happening out there in the world. I don't believe we have anything new to report on the African American Architectural Survey, nor the LGBTQ survey. Tanya, is there anything new that you want to mention about Culture Town? I believe the last that you had asked.
Yes, and I got a response back, but it is now smoldering, and there are other things with flames. So I haven't done anything with that, but there is a very good possibility of some collaboration with the state on getting a reprint. Thanks, Caleb. He's gonna have to pop out, and actually staff is too. We've got a 9 o'clock meeting on Lustron. But as far as the African American survey update, I'm still waiting to hear if we got the grant. And on the LGBTQ, the next step is a meeting with the consultant with some local organizers to see if we can get them to either partner with us or certainly support the to be scheduled first community meeting to make sure that we are inviting the right people to that. So that's the update on those three.
And the last thing on the list is pending potential landmarks. And that is the Sears Whitehall. And the last update we have is that the homeowner was working to select an architectural historian and move forward with that. So hopefully we'll have that sometime soon.
Great.
And that's all.
Well, good job, official committee member of one. And are you going to be joining us in the future, Tanya, or was this a let me go to one meeting and think about it?
No, I'd be happy. I'd love to join you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you guys are good with that, then.
And as far as an update, and I can't remember now, and maybe Aaron mentioned this at yesterday's meeting. I'm getting meetings and emails confused. We don't know yet for certain when the committees are going to start meeting in person. So City Council has gone back to meeting in person, and they have stated that the quasi-judicial board, such as Board of Adjustment and I think Appearance Commission has a quasi-judicial function now, and then the COA committee. So in July, that meeting will be in person. We're guessing that the others are going to start meeting in August, but we won't know until we're told. And so we will let you know as soon as we know.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Tanya. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
And see you guys next month.